It is Saturday, May 24th, and the Director of National Intelligence, DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, declassifying and exposing the illegal spy ring Biden Inc. created, used for 3 years, used to spy on American citizens. These documents now declassified. Wait till you see this. Also, the coincidences continue stacking up around this D.C. shooting suspect. You won't believe who the kid's father is. Unreal. And President Trump has done it, announcing this morning the return of nuclear energy in this country, invoking the Defense Production Act to get this done quickly. How utterly ironic that for decades Dems have been promising net zero carbon emissions. How ironic that it may be Donald Trump who achieves net zero. Unbelievable. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So things change quickly, very quickly, but we make it our job to remember, to keep track. It wasn't that long ago that Andrew Cuomo, for instance, was America's governor, the best governor in the country. It wasn't too long ago that state governments instituted emergency lockdown orders, closed schools, closed public parks and beaches, even closing non-essential businesses by order of the government, by decree. Your business is closed. Even gyms forced closed. This happened in predominantly blue states, but even some red states fell for the wave of totalitarian rule that we found ourselves living through during the pandemic. The federal government, even worse, the Biden administration telling us daily how this was a pandemic of the unjabbed, that you won't survive the winter unless you do what we say, unless you listen to us. Watch.
It's here now, and it's spreading, and it's going to increase. For unvaccinated, we are looking at a winter of severe illness and death for unvaccinated. For themselves, their families, and the hospitals they'll soon overwhelm. But there's good news. If you're vaccinated, you have your booster shot, you're protected from severe illness and death, period. Number 2, booster shots work. 3, boosters are free, safe, and convenient. About 60 million people have been boosted. So go get your shot today. Omicron is here. It's going to start to spread much more rapidly at the beginning of the year. And the only real protection is to get your shot.
In September 2021, President Biden delivered a speech that really was a turning point, declaring war on 80 million Americans, 80 million unjabbed Americans, telling us you have a choice. Either you get the jab or lose your job, using an emergency authority to force all employers, not just federal workers, all employers with over 100 employees to force all their employees to get jabbed or comply with weekly testing. Even though he had no legal authority to do this or enforce this, nothing in the Constitution or a law permits the federal government to force you as a business owner to require your employees to take a certain medication. It's insane. It's ridiculous, but he did it anyways.
My job as president is to protect all Americans. So tonight, I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated or show a negative test at least once a week.
And now we know just how far the Biden administration went in 2021 to enforce their will on the unjabbed, thanks to Trump's handpicked DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, who just uncovered and declassified documents showing the Biden intel agencies in this same time period decided to, get this, make a terror watch list, not for members of the Taliban or for Al-Qaeda, but for American unjabbed citizens, American citizens who refuse to do what they said. Tulsi declassifying these documents yesterday, which even spell out a new acronym for Americans who refused to comply. These people, Biden Inc. labeled DVEs, domestic violent extremists. Watch.
That when you look at the language of these documents that I've declassified, first, the strategic implementation plan of the Biden administration's designation of potential violent domestic extremists, it really talks about people who may likely turn out to be domestic violent extremists, or those who may likely turn to violence because of these specific quote-unquote ideologies that they hold. And there's a consistent thread through here that these ideologies that they are designating as turning into potentially violent activities or being manifested in violent activities happen to be those of people who were using their First Amendment rights to oppose certain policies of the Biden administration. And while some of the examples that are focused on there have to do with those who opposed the COVID vaccine mandates, those who opposed the mask mandates, parents who were concerned that their children going to school may be forcibly vaccinated with the COVID vaccine without the consent or awareness of parents. The list goes on, but it's not exclusive to this. In some of these reports that we've declassified, it shows that people who were opposed to Biden's border policy, for example, could therefore have propensities to join a militia or could become these domestic violent extremists that we're talking about here. And again, it's important to look at this in the totality and the sequence of how this happened. These documents were issued in December of 2021. You remember very well, Will, the speech, the ominous speech that President Biden gave in 2022, where with this red background and Marines standing in the background, he issued an address to the nation warning the American people that Donald J. Trump and MAGA Republicans pose a direct threat to the fabric of our republic. And then you put that together with how the FBI and others within the Biden administration directed social media companies to censor Americans and undermine our First Amendment rights because, of course, the social media companies don't want to be in a position to support the spread of domestic violent extremism. So when you look at all of these things together, you understand at its core the thing that I committed to the American people to root out, which is the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community and national security state against the American people.
Catherine Arridge, one of the journalists who obtained these documents, writing on X yesterday, the Biden administration labeling opponents of COVID mandates as domestic violent extremists. The designation infringed on the First Amendment and opened the door to investigating Americans for jab mandate skepticism, explaining the legalese behind why this is so significant, saying the designation created an articulable purpose for FBI or other government agents to open an assessment of individuals. The report claims that anti-government or anti-authority violent extremists characterized the jab and mask mandates as evidence of government overreach and resonated with DVEs, domestic violent extremists, who were motivated by QAnon. You can't make this up. So let me get this straight. If you believe the jab was potentially unsafe or not necessary for you or your children, that made you a DVE. It's crazy. Let me know in the comments if you think there needs to be accountability for this. Will there be consequences for the Biden administration and his cabinet members who authorized this, authorized putting innocent Americans on a terror watch list and investigating them illegally? In another story, the father of the DC shooting suspect, it turns out, was one of the Dems' honored guests at Trump's congressional address in March, Trump's State of the Union address. This is the father here, Eric Rodriguez. He's an anti-Trump SEIU member who spoke at the Democrat press conference ahead of Trump's speech in March. Democrat Jesus Garcia was the representative who invited Rodriguez to be his honored guest that night, telling the Post, Eric Rodriguez was our guest during Trump's joint speech to Congress, but we don't know his family. Don't blame us for what happened. Here he was just 2 months ago before Trump's speech. Watch.
They're slashing staff, crushing unions, and selling out the VA for what? So billionaires can make more money while veterans sit on a wait list. Or worse, They'll get no treatment. Our president was asleep while Musk was at the wheel.
In another story, President Trump making huge news announcing the return of nuclear energy, the only legitimate, clean source of energy that has the capability of sustaining the U.S. power grid. Trump signing multiple EOs yesterday, scaling back regulations on nuclear, on quadrupling U.S. nuclear power over the next 25 years, creating a pilot program for 3 new experimental reactors that will go live by July 4th of next year. And he has invoked the Defense Production Act to make this all possible, to get this moving, to secure the nuclear fuel supply in the United States. Watch what he said yesterday.
Sir, this next executive order is intended to reform the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. You heard a few of the people here speak about the complex regulatory processes that have really held the nuclear industry back. Before 1978, there were 133 reactors built in the United States. Since 1978, only 2 new commercial reactors have come online. That's because of overregulation, and the goal of this executive order is bringing that regulatory process into line with the actual needs of the industry and public safety, with an end goal of quadrupling the amount of nuclear power production in the next 2.5 decades.
It's fantastic. It's exciting, right? There you go.
This next executive order relates to nuclear reactor testing, sir. The degree of overregulation and governmental inaction in this space in particular has had the effect of throttling development of new, highly modernized nuclear reactors that could really revolutionize the field of nuclear power generation. So this executive order, it orders a revised regulatory process to speed this whole process while preserving, obviously, core safety concerns. It also creates a new pilot program with an expectation that we will have 3 new experimental reactors online by July 4th next year.
It's amazing. That's exciting. Okay, come on.
Lastly, sir, we have an executive order on reinvigorating the nuclear industrial base. There are a number of core issues here, including the issue with fuel feedstock that one of the speakers mentioned before. This executive order, among other actions, includes an invocation of the Defense Production Act in order to spur a closer collaboration with private industry to ensure that we have the fuel supplies we need for a modernized nuclear energy sector. In addition to that, it includes crucial provisions relating to the development of a nuclear energy sector workforce and a number of other key building blocks to the overall nuclear industry that we're trying to spur here.
Great. Thank you.
This is great news. For years, everyone knew nuclear was the way to go to get even close to net zero. If you support clean energy, why you're stuck buying windmills from China, I have no idea. We have the capability to build nuclear reactors, safe nuclear reactors. We've had it for a long time. Democrats for decades promising to deliver net zero, to eliminate carbon completely, and they've failed, refusing to use nuclear energy for some reason, instead depending on China to build windmills and solar panels, which, let's face it, can't power or sustain the U.S. power grid, at least not now. All those promises, all that money, $2+ trillion Democrats printed for the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, to achieve net zero, and it's done what? It's done next to nothing. How ironic is it that Donald Trump may be the one who delivers a clean energy future? Now, this isn't intended to replace fossil fuels. It's meant to expand nuclear power, something that's been blocked in this country for decades. These EOs will finally allow nuclear to make a legitimate comeback, expand research, expand the use of nuclear, eliminating so many of the regulations that were put in place years ago. So if you want something close to net zero, nuclear's the way to do it. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.